Evening. We are in Matthew chapter 5 again tonight, and the last part of the chapter will be starting in a minute in verse 38. Thanks for being here. It's fall break week. Several I know are out and gone. I saw where Johnny had surgery, and I guess the statement was just made, at least he made it through it. But this goes all the way back to the automobile accident? Really? Really? Okay. Oh, me. It does sound serious. I saw him. I think he was over at the picnic that day. He was there. Okay. We are continuing tonight with the Sermon on the Mount. We're going to begin in verse 38, and these are some things that I know that are not brand new to us, but certainly good things to be reminded of, but also to maybe rediscover some things that we didn't think about before, what's being said. Again, to remind us, Jesus is beginning each one of these topics or these sections with the words, "You have heard that it was said." And so he is referring back to the way that it was under the old law and what the people would be familiar with. But then Jesus is changing. Sometimes he's saying, let's not do that, let's do this. Sometimes he's saying, let's go beyond that. Let's do more. He's presenting kind of different ideas, but I would say that they're ideas that build on what's been said and go on beyond. It's an improvement, I think would be fair to say. And we'll see that in the first thing that we look at today. Everybody's heard this phrase in verse 38. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You all heard that one, haven't you? I've seen several movies where that was kind of the theme and that would be quoted. You know, a lot of movies are about getting revenge, aren't they? Somebody does something wrong, and a man loses his family or whatever it might be. Somebody's wrongfully done wrong, and so the movie's about how somebody's going to get even with them, and sometimes it's the bad guy even that wants to get even with somebody else because he sees what they did as wrong. And so over the years, I've heard this verse quoted a lot in movies and on other occasions. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What I would like for us to do, somebody please volunteer. I need somebody to go to Deuteronomy 19 and 21. Who can do that? Oh, y'all are going to be a cooperative bunch. Okay, I also need Leviticus 24:20. Who can do that? Anybody? Okay, you've got Deuteronomy 19:21. Read that if you would, Gail. Okay. If we lay the background, I think we'll see that that is the law being given under Moses on how a person is to be punished for what they have done. In other words, if I don't know, if Rick steals Jay's car and wrecks it, then Rick somehow is going to lose his automobile as punishment. I don't know. I guess if Jay gets to decide, Jay might say, I'll just take it. Or if he gets the satisfaction out of it, maybe he'll just go wreck it and give it back to Rick, because that's what you did to his. But anyway, that's what that was about. It was about a law of punishment. And if whatever you did against somebody else, if you were guilty of that, your punishment would be to receive, and that's why it said. I doubt many times if it was an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, but it could have been. The idea is what? If you give somebody an uppercut and you knock their tooth out, and you were the one that started the fight anyway, well, then you could expect as your punishment, and this was law that you get your tooth knocked out. All right, if the person wanted to do that. I want us to understand that was the penalty for how crimes were punished. You received a like penalty for the thing that you had done wrong. Because that's going to matter a little bit, I think, as we go on. Anybody look at Leviticus 24:20? Okay. Okay. If you sinfully, if you wrongfully enter, this is not necessarily talking about some accident that couldn't be avoided. And there's places in the Old Testament that talk about that. But if you purposefully inflicted damage to somebody, then there again, the same thing. It's just kind of repeating the same law, but it's repeating it another way. Verse 39, but I say, here's what Jesus says to you. Do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Now, that's not new to anybody either, is it? Somebody hits you on one cheek, you turn to them the other. That is hard to do. That is hard to do, Kenny. But and I think though it may be difficult but let's make sure we get this in context. When Jesus says, "Do not resist the one who is evil," what do you think he's saying? Do you think he's saying if some guy breaks into your house and steals $100 from you, Jay, well, you ought to just go into town, get your money out of the bank, bring it back out there and let him have all of it? Is he saying that? No. Is he saying not protect, just give in completely? I don't think that's what Jesus is saying. I really think what he's talking about is instead of retaliation, we react in a different way. Because really, to retaliate, I mean, that's what movies are made out of, right? Getting retaliation. That's what a lot of people do. When I was in school, though, did you ever see anybody retaliate when you were in school? Did you, when you were going to school, Farmington, did you ever see anybody retaliate against somebody else? Every day. Every day. And so if somebody had, as you walked by, somebody got out and popped you right between the shoulders, real hard, or hit you on the arm to give you a frog. That was the thing the big boys would hit and see if they could get a little bump to rise up on your arm. Then what would you be looking for the opportunity to do? That's right. That's right. That's the way we are. But I think Jesus is talking about perhaps another way to respond to that. And it goes along with, do you remember what in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, what would Paul have to say to us about getting revenge? Who does revenge belong to according to the Bible? The Lord. And if you treat somebody kindly who has mistreated you, what was the language Paul used that said you would be doing when you did that? You're heaping coals of fire on their head. If I understand the idea right, it's kind of like you're making them ashamed the way they've acted, and you respond in a much kinder, a much better way. And that can have an effect on people, can't it? You know, if yeah. I think it's probably happened to me. I mean, you know, if you're really mad and you do something to hurt somebody and they just turn right around, and it's like, instead of retaliate, it's almost just the opposite and all. How does it make you feel? It's kind of like, that's embarrassing. I wish I hadn't have done that, acted that way. It can have effect. I really believe that that's the overall point that Jesus is making. What does he say? If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, and the tunic was a part of this standard garment, that clothing that people would wear. Let me see, it's a long garment worn under the cloak next to the skin. So it's the one underneath, and then he says, let him have your cloak also, and the cloak would be the outer garment that would cover that. So Jesus is saying, just go another step. If they're going to try to sue you and take your tunic, you just let them have the outer garment too. And if anyone forces you, here's the famous one. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, Jesus says what? Go with them too. Now that one, I've heard preachers preach, and my understanding is that with the Romans in control of the land of Judea during the time of Jesus, a Roman soldier by law had a right to compel a Jewish citizen in Judah to carry his belongings for him. But he could only ask them to carry it for 1 mile. And I've also been told that there were places sometimes in some areas where they marked 1 mile off in the road. And so you can imagine, if you're having to carry the soldier's load, when you get to the mile stick, you don't take but 1 step past it, Andrew, and you drop it all and you get rid of it. But Jesus challenges and says, don't just go 1 mile, go 2 miles. Now, why would he say do something like that? First of all, it's voluntary, right? It's not just doing something because that's what you got to do, or that's the rule. It's going on. It's going beyond, and that's kind of the whole context of what Jesus is doing here. Everything we're talking about, Jesus is challenging us to go further, to do more, to make a bigger attempt to try to make it right. Uh,
What kind of effect do you think that's going to have on a Roman soldier?
yeah, anybody.
Why are you doing it?
Yeah, because there's a good chance that the Roman soldiers didn't think much of the people of the area, and they probably took advantage of it, and they weren't treating the people very nice, and they knew that they weren't. But as Dodie said, but then if you get to the place and then a person goes on and does it for another, what would be the immediate thoughts in that Roman soldier's mind? What is going on here? You know, what would he have done if it had been reversed? He'd have dropped it at a mile. But Jesus is challenging his disciples not to. You know, and what's that gonna do? If the disciples of Jesus don't react the way most people do, then it's going to make an impression, isn't it?
They're going to ask questions and say, why did you do that?
Yeah,
The Lord told me to.
because I'm a Christian, and I've been challenged by my Lord to live that way and to treat people that way. There's power in that. That's real. That's really showing a faith and a confidence in Jesus. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. How did this start out? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That sounds like the way most people in the world treat other people. You know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You make it hard for me, I'm going to make it hard for you. That's just the way people live. Jesus is challenging his disciples, you and I, not to be that way. And it's, as Kenny said in his first remark, it's not easy. It's not easy. But he challenges us. And so in that last statement, when he talks about give to the one who begs from you, that's like, let's see, what would Jesus say? Jesus said, when you throw a banquet, when you throw a feast, who did Jesus suggest you invite? Not the people who would have a feast themselves and invite you to come to that one in return, but rather, he said, invite the poor and the needy and the people in the streets, and invite them and throw one for them. Because if you just throw a party for the people that'll throw a party for you, he says, everybody will do that. Anybody will do that. He challenges us. I think that's the idea in these verses right here, because that last part, if somebody's begging something of you, or if someone really needs to borrow something from you, they're probably the people that can't return the favor, right? They can't return the favor, but Jesus is saying you help them anyway. You go the extra mile, as we often say. That's where the phrase came from, right? Huh?
I mean, I've heard that all my life. Go the extra mile.
Yeah.
I've never associated that.
You haven't. No, I think this is where it comes from, Andrew. Just missed that?
I mean, I know that verse. I guess.
Yeah. Hadn't thought about it? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where it comes from.
I'm going to say most people that use that, well, not most people, but a lot of people that use that have no idea that it comes from the Bible.
Right. I agree. Yeah. I don't know, but retaliation in kind is I think it's a pretty strong human characteristic. I mean, We had grandchildren at our house today, and they do really good. But you know, now and then, they don't get along. And if one of them takes something away from the other one, what do you think they try to do? Oh, that's all right here. Take my other toy too. No, you know what they try to do? They try to go steal something back if they get a chance. You know, I want mine back, or I'm going to take this one. And that's us. That's a simple illustration, but that's people. Right. Yes. Right.
Well, go back and read all the stuff the law of Moses says. They don't live by most
No.
of those things, you know, that the law of Moses says. But they find one or two that they like, and so now the Bible says this, you know.
Yes.
The Bible also says whatever, you know, go to the law of Moses and pick up anything, basically.
Right.
The law also says that, you know, but we don't do it anymore.
Right. Well, and Jay, I'm glad you brought us back full circle in this little section, and I was about to go on without doing it. You're exactly right, and here's the point I want to make. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was the law of the land, and that's the way punishment was to be enforced. It was not about vigilante retaliation. It wasn't about getting even with somebody. It was about punishment because you have violated the law. You understand? It's not about Gina called me a name and so I get to call her one. That's not what that law was about. It's about I did something to hurt Gina and I've been found guilty, and she has the right, or the law, under the law, there is the right to punish me by giving me the same issue, by treating me the same way or hurting me the same way. That's what an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It was the penal system. You understand? It's how people were punished. It was not about how you treat each other. It never was intended to be. But Jay, as you said, that's the way people want to use it. Because what does it do? It gives you the right to do what you want to do, and that is get revenge or retaliate. And it's not. That's not what it was under the Old Testament. And Jesus said, don't do it anyway. There's a better way, he says, to handle those conflicts, and we've talked about it. Anything else, anybody, on that one? Right.
But yet Jesus is asking us to do more. You know, the old law is impossible, but wait a minute, Jesus is asking you to do more. But it makes sense. If you look at it, it makes sense. It's a mindset, it's a heart set.
Yes.
Rules. That's why Jesus' law is not written down. That's why we don't have a new Ten Commandments.
Right.
That's why we don't have a book of Jesus' laws, is that I think they're not written down for a purpose.
Right.
It's a lifestyle.
Right. Jay, you make an excellent point, I think, when you say that, well, it's a matter of the heart and a matter of the feelings. Here was what happened under the law of Moses, and it can happen today because oftentimes Christian people, quote unquote, sometimes try to turn the New Testament into a group of rules to follow too, and some people feel safety in that, but Jesus, the danger in that is like, well, I go to church every Sunday, you know, so that entitles me to something. That entitles me. That's proof that I'm a good Christian. That's what we want to think. And I wish I could come up with things besides going to church. But if we're not careful, but what are some questions we would ask? Well, what do you do when you get there? Do you enjoy it? Do you go and do you really worship when you get there? Is your heart stirred? Do you really, from deep inside, do you honor the Lord while you're there in the songs that you sing, in the prayers that you pray? The things that are said, is God really praised and uplifted? And do you do that in your heart? And what if our answer is, no, but I went?
And you can turn around and say the opposite. Okay, they don't go to church every Sunday, so something's wrong.
Yeah.
They don't go to church every Sunday, so they must not be that good. You know, and that's the opposite way of looking at it. Well, I go every
Right.
Sunday, so I must be good.
So if we're not careful, we begin to try to make the law of Christ like the old law. And it's obviously, in every one of these sections that we're looking at, Jesus' challenge to do more is not just about something you do, it's about who you are, just who you really are, how you really act. And yes. Right. 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 Well, yeah, of course, there's always remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. But yeah, and that's a valid point. The New Testament, Jesus' way for us to live does involve thou shalt and thou shalt nots. But isn't it fair to say, but in the New Testament, it's not just about doing it, it's about wanting to do it. It's about your feelings, it's about your heart, it's about doing things for the right reasons as well. Whereas I think under the old law, in Jesus' time, who were considered, as we started out this study, who was considered the most religious, pious people of the day? The Pharisees were. What did Jesus say about them? Yeah, you're hypocrites. They claimed to keep the law, but not for the right reasons. You know, in fact, Jesus said, you do what they tell you to do because they're telling you to do what the law says, but you don't do it, but you don't act like they act because they're awful. So, yes, we have, Kenny, if your point is that we still have rules to follow, absolutely we do. We have laws. We have commandments that we are told to follow. And we are to follow them. But oftentimes they're based, I don't know, how do you say that? It's a step beyond don't just do this or not do it. It's about you go on and you don't retaliate, but what do? Well, you take an extra step and you go another mile with them. You do something, you go and even do more than what we might think is required. Let's go on. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I'm not able to find that last part in anywhere. In the references that I had and what I looked up, it would always say to love your neighbor, and enemies weren't mentioned. Okay? So when Jesus says this, I think that's kind of the way people assume. In the Old Testament, it's going to say love your neighbor. It's not going to mention your enemies. But Jesus is going to go on with that. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. Kenny said a while ago that turning the other cheek was a hard thing to do. What about this one? Loving your enemies. Let me ask you this. Is it fair to say that you could love somebody and not like them? I think so too.
You know, we know when we're very young, we're taught 4 different meanings of the word love.
Right,
Obviously, that's not the same love you have for a spouse or whatever.
right.
It says love your enemies.
Obviously.
It's not what we think of.
Right. It's the agape love, which is what? Seeking the best for somebody. So the idea, Jesus says, is that you want the best thing to happen even to those who are enemies. And when I say the best thing to happen, I'm talking about in a spiritual, in a real spiritual context. Not that, the thief would be successful and be able to steal $1 million and get away with it, because then they could really live a good life. It's not saying that. It's not loving them that way. It's loving their soul. It's about wanting to see them to overcome that idea of being a thief, and to get past that and to learn how to live and be a blessing to people instead of being somebody who's taken away from the quality of their lives. But the last statement that we read is so powerful. What does it say? So that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. What's the message there in those words? What's he saying to us? Love your enemies so that you may be sons of your heavenly Father. What's he saying? All right. Who are Christians? Why we wear a name. That name is Christian. What does it mean? What does it imply? Several things. I'm a disciple of Jesus. Well, who's a disciple of Jesus? What does that mean? What does the word disciple mean? What does it have to do with? Learning and following, doesn't it? It's about being like Jesus, the best that we can. Well, if we love our enemies, we can be sons of God, which means what? We are acting like our Heavenly Father. We're acting like our Father if we can love our enemies. And then he gives an example of how God does this. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. What? Wouldn't it be something if every summer, every evil farmer, Kenny, didn't get any rain, and the Christian farmers just got just the right amount every year? There'd be some conversions made, wouldn't there? Right. But why doesn't that happen? Why wouldn't God do that? Because that kind of violates the nature of God. Because who will God be good to? To everybody. The sun comes up every day. It doesn't just shine on good people. It shines on evil people. It comes rain on good people. It comes rain on bad people. Good, bad people. Huh? God loves everybody, and that's the point. That's the point. And so He can say, Jesus can say to us, I want you to be sons of your Father. What was the old commercial? The commercial was about smoking cigarettes. But it was about the little boy watching his daddy smoke a cigarette. And so when he got one, he went out there under the tree and tried to smoke one just like his daddy did. The son tries to be like the father when he admires him. And so that's the challenge. God loves his enemies. Now, he's going to punish them, but he would prefer not to. In fact, he found a way to save them if they'll accept it. Right? But he loves even evil. If you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? Hey, the people despise those tax collectors, and a lot of them evidently were pretty bad fellas. And so when Jesus says that, Jesus says, you know, if you just love the people that love you, you're no different from the tax collectors. Even they do that. What is Jesus doing in all of these passages? He's challenging us to do more, better, bigger. Hard? Yes. Difficult? Yes. Challenging? Yes. Why? Because it's trying to be like Jesus and be like the Father in heaven. And that is a challenge. And one that we can't meet perfectly, but He's wanting us to try. And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Who were the Gentiles to these people? Heathens. They're the unbelievers. The Gentiles do love their neighbors. They hate their enemies. You therefore must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. The word perfect in the Bible also, it's not perfection, although, yeah, we could say God has perfection, but it almost always carries with the idea of a completeness, of a maturity, okay? Reaching a mature level that we are capable of reaching. And I think that's what Jesus says. He says, there's nothing wrong with it. You like to love the people that love you. That's good. You ought to. But he says, you know what? Everybody does that. I'm telling you, I want you to do something more. I want you to love people even that might be your enemies. Now, as we started this discussion, I don't think it means you have to like them. You may not like them at all. Jesus didn't like the Pharisees. But what do you think Jesus would have said? What did he want to see happen to the Pharisees? That's right. He'd love to see them turn from their evil, sinful ways and turn to him. Would he have saved them? Would he have forgiven them of their sins? I'm sure he did. I'm sure there's a lot of them who did turn. And that's what he would like for all of them to have done. But as a whole, as a group, primarily they didn't. Well, I thought we'd get to chapter 6, but we didn't make it because I'm too slow. Yes. Who? Did he? I will be. You're behind me in school, so 67 or 68, probably. Oh, he's in y'all's class. That's right. I'm sorry to hear that. It changed his life, didn't it? I need to turn this off.